What happens when a veteran misses the camaraderie and experience of being on a team and finds a lane in energy that most people never think about? Then they decide to make it a mission to pull other vets into that room with them. Welcome to Project Vanguard podcast, where veterans and mission-driven leaders share what it takes to build America's energy future. I'm your host, Kevin Doffing. Today I'm talking with Rickey Stuchell, an Army veteran and land acquisition leader who builds teams to secure the land, the rights, and the agreements that make energy and infrastructure projects possible. Rickey's story is not a straight line. It starts with a 17-year-old kid who needed discipline and direction, how he moved through life as an Army medic and then hit the hardest part, getting pushed out early because his body would not cooperate, and trying a bunch of paths that did not pan out until one finally did. We dig into what kind of military transition does to a person, what you miss when the uniform comes off, and why Rickey is now all in on rebuilding that team feeling through Project Vanguard's Community Leader Fellowship as the Virginia chapter lead. Along the way, we get practical about the industry, why renewables have slowed, why data centers have accelerated, and how the land side is often the hidden battlefield where the project either earns trust or just eats itself. By the end, you'll see how service can keep going long after the military, and you'll have a simple playbook for how to listen, learn, and build real relationships in an industry that runs on nuance and trust. Let's get into it. Rickey, thanks for joining me today, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate the time and to be able to sit down and talk about one of my favorite things, and that's, our military service and helping other veterans.
I mean, I do have to say, you're out of regs because I see that beard covering up the Project Vanguard logo on some nice swag you got there.
Yes.
Are you just going to throw it over your shoulder? Okay.
Almost,
You ever braid that thing?
No. I would be afraid of trying to get it unbraided.
Oh, God. Yeah, you should see what I end up doing to my daughter's hair.
I'm a girl dad too, so I understand.
Well, Rickey, so when you're not tying buns, what would you say you do these days?
For the most part, I put together land teams and finding projects throughout the country that we can get a team onto for whatever type of land acquisition services are needed.
So how much of that these days is still renewable versus data center versus other?
Without a doubt, renewable has dipped. I would say over my 6 years working in the renewable side, it had been probably closer to 50-50 between renewable and other types of projects. In the last year, though, it has dropped off.
Yeah. Well, there's some headwinds that we're facing right now. What do you see picking up that slack? Do you see thermal generation coming up or just other real estate plays, land acquisition plays at work?
So we're seeing a lot of people shifting more towards the data center realm, being based here out of Virginia. We have kind of been at the forefront of that market for the last decade. And it's only increased and spread out over the last several years, where it was mainly concentrated to Loudoun County, Virginia, which is Northern Virginia. We're now seeing it creep into Central Virginia and spread throughout.
Wow. Yeah, no, I was just reading today. I mean, I think Texas has the largest boom of new data centers that are supposed to come online. I don't know how much of that is just interconnect queue, permit request, and what's really going to be steel in the ground, but it seems like a lot.
Texas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area is also a major market for it. And one of the main reasons is because, as you know, when they had all the cold snap, I guess it was about 4 years ago now, in Texas, where it definitely caused some interruptions and they had to start looking at hardening the grid there. Well, by doing that and adding in all these battery storage sites along with all of the additional solar and wind farms that were already there, they've created a surplus of power to allow these data centers to grow.
Interesting.
Where we may not have done that as much in some of the other areas. So I can tell you right now in our area, it takes 7 years to even get the power to your data center once you put in the request.
Wow.
Now, of course, you're going to put the request in before you break ground once you have the permits.
Yeah, there's a whole sequence there.
Yeah, but even if you have it built in 3 years, you're sitting waiting. So it's kind of delayed things quite a bit.
It's interesting. So, I mean, on the land side, have you seen like the data center stuff affect the industry? Because, I mean, The renewable industry, it was incentivized because of these corporate power purchase agreements, these PPAs that under like the net zero stuff was really trying to like buy clean energy and build it. And I know from one of the wind owners I'm friends with back in the early aughts, 20 years ago, the financing was a lot of like hedges against natural gas prices, right? So it was like, hey, if this goes up too high, wind will be a backstop against this. So we feel confident, in this play. But at this point, a lot of those earlier assumptions, it's not all net zero. It's not a hedge, at least I think, on natural gas. But now the data centers aren't just, buying a bunch of the power. They're installing so much more capacity of demand, not capacity, but that's going to facilitate a lot more demand for supply side. What are you seeing with the data centers? Are they building on site, something else?
So one thing that I think is gaining more traction, I've heard about a few throughout the country, and I think we're going to see it grow more, are essentially what I would refer to as an energy park, where you've got a lot of the renewable energy developers realizing that there is money in the data center, that they need that power. So why not go purchase or lease 2,000 acres where they can build a solar farm or a wind farm, put battery storage on it, and then add 4 or 5 million square feet of data center.
Oh, wow.
There's other things that have to take place to make it work. But essentially, the name that I've heard of being called is the energy park.
That sounds familiar to what I've heard in Louisiana with something that Meta's working on.
Yes, that was a project that I had some dealings with early on, and that was supposed to be a complete solar farm, and they needed to kind of renegotiate the deal a little bit. This was before the big, beautiful bill changed things, but I believe that's where they came up with this idea. Well, how about if we did this and we gave you some room to build a data center or 3?
Pretty big ones too.
I believe that's how that went, if it's the project that I'm thinking of, but
could have been anybody.
So
when you talk about building out these land teams, like what is the composition of a land team? Like when you're talking about land team, I'm thinking like amphibious assault. What comes to your mind and what actually gets deployed when you're organizing and executing a land team?
So it's like an assault. There's 3 different types of phases to most land teams for renewable energy. You've got your agents who are going to be boots on the ground out there talking with the property owners. Then you've got project managers who are kind of overseeing everything. A huge part of the project manager's, life is not only interaction with their agents, but also interactions with the attorneys for the property owners and going back and forth between the company and the landowner's attorneys to make sure that we can agree on not only the terms, but also how it's going to be written up. These agreements are 40, 50, 60 pages long. So even though we're not attorneys in most cases, we have to play one on TV, at least for that period. And then the third piece, and probably the most important piece of any land team, is their technicians. The technicians are the people, they're document specialists. They know, it's like a paralegal, and they know exactly what everything needs to say and how it needs to be done in the documents so that they keep the agent straight is what they really do. A good technician is actually the puppeteer for both the project manager and the agents to make sure everybody's doing exactly what they're supposed to do so that when things are turned in, recorded legally, that it's all accurate and correct and everybody's in agreement.
Okay. Sounds like a lot of title kind of stuff.
That is part of it. Sometimes they do the titles. A lot of times they do the titles.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that are taking the templates and writing the agreements.
So how much disruption is there from AI on this? I know I've heard a lot of talks about what you just described is where AI is going to lower a lot of costs on residential PV install. How has that hit, with these larger land deals that you deal with?
At this point, I don't believe that AI is going to affect us too much. I would like to see us using AI. I use it in my everyday life now, and I'll use it to look at different agreements and compare them and contrast. It saves me hours and hours of reading documents and comparing them just to make sure nobody slipped something in.
Yeah. So for you, what does that look like? You're deploying these teams. You've got all 3 parts of this team at every phase of the project. They come and go, and you're just kind of orchestrating all of it. Or are you on the ground, door knocking and leading the fire team that's going on site first? How does that look like from your perspective?
I spend most of the time here these days in the office, a lot of conference calls, a lot of talking, not only with the clients, but with the project managers and even the agents. But my passion is going out and teaching people. So I am not shy about jumping on an airplane, going out to the project area. And if I have made suggestions on things for people to go do and they're hesitant to do it, I'm the first one to jump in and show you. Let me show you how I do it.
Roger that, Sergeant. Okay. Well, so Rickey, take me back. What was the origin of you getting into the military? What kind of drove that?
So I was probably like most kids who didn't know what they wanted. I bounced around a little bit with ideas, but my dad was in the military. I had a rough year, my senior year, or going into my senior year, where we had a lot of people that I knew that were getting in a lot of legal trouble.
Sounds familiar.
I made the decision, actually, it was in the first week of my senior year. I went and saw a recruiter, told him what I wanted. My parents happened to be on vacation. And when they came home on Sunday evening, I sat down and I told them that I met with the recruiter. And I was 17 at the time. So I said, and by the way, I'm going to need you to sign some paperwork. And the recruiter's going to come by and go over everything with you. When's the recruiter coming by? Right about ding dong.
Well done, Rickey.
So, yeah, all worked out.
Any recruiter I've known, they've always told me that their worst meeting with the parents is when the parents are vets. How did that meeting go with your family?
It was actually a great meeting. My parents really knew that I needed that. I needed the discipline. I needed a direction. So they were absolutely floored that I was going this route, but very happy at the same time.
So did you finish out the school year? This was like week 1, or did you like, bye?
No, I went on the delayed entry program, finished it. And, it's kind of strange because you end up drilling with your recruiters for every month or every 2 weeks or something like that. We had to get together and we'd go to the recruiting station and they'd do PT with us and just went through a few things. So when we got to basic, we weren't completely lost.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So when you were choosing your branch and specialty, like, how did that come about?
Strange enough story. I actually wanted to be an MP.
Of course. Who doesn't?
But turns out, I believe you have to be a minimum of 5'8" and 160 pounds.
Huh.
And at the time, I was a whopping 5 foot tall and 103 pounds. So little disparity there. But I had read this really cool book. It was a quick synopsis, short story of every Medal of Honor recipient in U.S. history. And I noticed 2 things reading that book. The vast majority of them were medics, and the vast majority didn't come home. For whatever reason, that made me say, you know what? I'll be a medic then. If I can't be an MP, I'll be a medic.
Oh, okay. I was going to go the other way.
It wasn't because I wanted the glory or anything like that. It was, I think, more because I'm a little insane. And I thought I'm the guy that would run into the middle of the firefight and do whatever I got to do.
I love that, man. Everybody loves Doc. So what was that like? Just a lot of IVs, on Monday morning at PT or?
Yeah, I ran an aid station for 2 years in Germany. It wasn't just Monday morning. It was Monday through Friday. And in my barracks room, I kept plenty of IV fluids for the weekend.
My man, that's how you stay popular with the guys.
Absolutely.
So how long were you in Germany?
I spent 2 years there. Fun times.
I picked up a line from somebody else, but whenever I talk about my time in Iraq, it's like, I wasn't in the military that long. Almost half of it was in Iraq. It's a lifetime of stories.
Yeah. Few safety briefings written from some antics between me and my friends, and we'll leave it at that.
Okay. So when you decided to get out, what was the thinking around that?
I didn't have a lot of a choice. I had medical issues with my legs almost immediately. I was not retired medically, but was very strongly told that I would never be promoted beyond being an E4 Mafia.
There's nothing wrong with the E4 Mafia.
Absolutely nothing wrong with it, but you can only stay in the E4 Mafia for so long before they decide that you have to go home.
That is true. A little bit of up or out.
Yeah.
So what was the craziest thing you ever got up to in the E4 Mafia that you can legally talk about?
So my favorite thing was, I'm pretty sure there's no statute of limitations now. When I was stationed in Germany, my unit deployed to Saudi Arabia during the first Gulf War. And we came up with this brilliant idea to empty out all of the rubbing alcohol bottles and refill them with Everclear.
Okay.
So we shipped multiple times cases of rubbing alcohol to our fellow medics, and then they could distribute as needed.
Right. I mean, you got to medicate somehow.
Yep.
So you go through this medical deal. It's an encouragement, if not a boot to the rear to get moving. What did you think you were going to do when you got out?
To be honest, I wasn't sure. I, again, had aspirations of becoming a police officer and going to that route. And the main reason I wanted to do it was I thought I could help kids stay away from it and kind of keep the bad people away from good kids who are just getting caught up with the wrong crowd.
Yeah.
That did not work out. And I bounced around for a long time trying to figure out what was the right thing for me to do.
What did you try that didn't work out?
I applied at every police office county in the area. I applied with the federal government. I even tried going to our state ABC bureau and say, hey, at the time I was 22 years old or so. And I said, hey, I know I'm 22, but I look like I'm 12. You can send me to go buy in the stores undercover. And I thought it was a brilliant idea, but they didn't think so.
I assume the ABC in Virginia means alcohol something.
Yeah, it's alcohol beverage control.
There you go. Yeah, I guess we have TABC in Texas, so I get that. So how did you find your current gig? How did you find land manning?
I totally fell into this. I worked in the lawn care and landscape industry for about 10 years and just really got tired of the long hours and low pay. My cousin, or my wife's cousin, who was a real estate appraiser, was doing really well. This was in the boom of 405. And so I went to him, and he's named Rickey. And I said, Rickey, how can I get into your business? And he said, well, you have to have a mentor, and I'd be happy to mentor you. So great. I did that for a couple of years. And it just so happened that the Virginia Department of Transportation was desperately trying to find appraisers when the market crashed. Or right before the market crashed. I saw it coming and I knew work was starting to slow down. So I grabbed that opportunity and ran with it. Ended up going to work a few years later for a consultant. And the first thing they said to me was, well, you can't just be an appraiser. You're going to have to go out and negotiate with property owners too. Sounds like fun. Land acquisition. Let's try it.
What was it like the first time you did that?
Kind of interesting. I went out, I watched another guy on one property, talked to one owner, and then he basically handed me everything and said, you're up.
Not much of a left seat, right seat, right, is it?
Not at all. But it was good because I enjoyed it right off the bat. So it's been a fun, interesting 20 years.
Okay. And then I think we met up at one of the ACP happy hours, San Antonio.
That sounds right.
That was the smallest one we had. We only had like 12 people there, but pretty much everybody's still like in touch from that. But it's just interesting how compelling a horrible message on a poster or in a agenda that just says Vets Happy Hour and the quality of people that end up turning out. What kind of made you decide, hey, I paid a lot of money to come to this. I flew in from out of town. I'm here for several days. I'm going to stick around for this Vets Happy Hours as literally the entire conference is being broken down on the exhibit floor. I'm going to make time for this.
So, fellow veteran that I had met at a previous conference, Brian Chen. Brian and I were hanging around that day, and there was a few drinks going on at the event hall as we were breaking stuff down.
Possibly.
And Brian was running out with you and a couple of other guys, and he kind of grabbed me by the arm and said, hey, come on, come with us. And I looked at him and just said, where are we going? He goes, don't worry about it. So like a true vet, I followed.
Your E4 Mafia roots, your ears are picking up. Wait, they can't tell me? They won't tell me? I'm in.
Yeah, it was a great time though, and you got me hooked from that day.
Well, so you're now in the, our inaugural community leader fellowship. What kind of drove you to be like, yeah, I'll do this too?
I don't think I could say it any better than vets helping vets. The one thing that every veteran, I think, misses the most when they get out is the camaraderie. It's a different mindset. You learn that we all give each other a hard time. Everybody gets shit from everybody, but you also have their back. The same guy that I'm going to talk crap about, I'm going to be the first one to defend.
Or I'm only going to be nice to them when they're not around and I'm telling other people about them. But as soon as I see you, man, I am going to lay into you because I have some good material.
Yes. And it helps that I grew up actually next to a Marine Corps base and my dad was stationed on an Army base.
Wow. It's a lot.
Yes. Interesting area to grow up in. But I learned all that from my dad. And one of the main reasons I ended up choosing the Army was one of his friends that told some cool stories about being in the Army. And then my grandfather was in the Army during World War II. So I was like, hey, that's where the fun is happening.
Yeah. I always remember kind of like with my kids, my dad was in Vietnam, but like never told me a lot of firefight stories. Those only kind of started to come out once I joined the military 40 years later. But I always remember the stories that he would tell about like being an XO and like working deals in Saigon and like trading rations for like new boots to get the guys, but being the only unit with like new boots and good kit. And it always kind of struck me as I'm like, it was more like a Hogan's Heroes kind of like fantasy of the military. It's like, okay, so this is where you make deals, you get stuff done, and you just make it happen regardless of what obstacles are in your way or what the rules are.
So my grandfather during World War II was actually the communications guy and clerk. And even though he was World War II, not Korea, growing up, we watched the show MASH.
Great show.
And my grandfather was like a dead ringer for Radar O'Reilly. I don't think he was 5 foot. I think my grandfather was about 4'11".
Ricky, do you descend from hobbits? I mean, what are we talking here?
Yes. Anybody that's ever met my parents completely understand where I got my height from. My dad was about 5'5". My mom was about 4'7". So I ended up right in the middle.
There you go.
But yeah, my grandpa was about my height and he wore those same round glasses that tucked behind the ears. And so I always kind of looked at that and I was like, Grandpa, were you Radar? Did they base that on you?
That's a high compliment.
Yeah, he never talked about the military, though. The only thing he ever said to me about his entire time, and he fought in World War II for 2 years and 2 months. His unit was the first one to land in Africa and the last ones to leave in Europe.
Ooh, that guy's got some stories.
But he never shared any of them. The only story he ever shared with me was when I got stationed in Germany. He told me about a truck that, as he said, that they absconded from Hitler that was full of cognac. So they acquired it. And then he looked at me and he just said, watch out for the beer, it'll get you. And that was it. My entire life.
Was he still around when you went into the military?
Absolutely.
Did any new stories come out after that?
He did not. My grandfather was one of the people that suffered for PTSD for over 50 years, his entire basically life after he came home.
Yeah.
So he just never talked about it.
Yeah, one of my dad's uncles was in Pacific Island fight with the Marines. And I mean, great guy, never spoke a word about what happened.
We didn't even know until right before he died, we cleaned out my great-grandfather's house and found my grandfather's Bronze Star.
Really?
And we did some research on the unit. We ended up finding out he was with the Thunderbirds on the day that they took over Dachau.
Wow.
So we did some research and found out, and we were able to trace where he went because they started in Africa and they went all the way up. He did 4 amphibious landings, including Africa, 2, I believe, in Italy and 1 into France.
Ooh, man, those are the odds to get through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. We used to joke when we were going over to Iraq, like, hey, I want to thank all of you for my pending Medal of Honor. I mean, all of you are going to die, but like, that's how I get it, right? Anytime I talk to kids who are like, I want this or I want that and I want to achieve that, I'm like, man, you don't realize how many bad things have to happen to your friends for you to get those little pieces of metal. Like, you just want to go do your job. You don't want to be in a position where you get one of those things because not good things are happening to you and everyone around you.
Yeah.
Well, as we go through this, you know, you're now in the fellowship. We're super excited to have you. We got big plans for Virginia. Can you talk a little bit about what are you looking forward to as we start the chapter in Virginia?
So the biggest thing is really just trying to go out and find people in the industry that are fellow veterans, but as we grow that group, then trying to connect people. I'm a big believer in networking, but I'm a bigger believer in helping my fellow vets. And if I can find somebody who's getting out of the military who would like to get into our industry, I want to do everything I can. I might not be able to help them, and being in the land acquisition area might not be for them. And that's cool. We're a strange bunch of group, and there's very few of us out there. But over the years, I've gotten to know a lot of developers out there and a lot of people out there that, hey, maybe I can make some phone calls and see if I can connect you with somebody. To me, that's more rewarding than getting a new project.
Yeah.
Not that I don't like doing all that, but I'd much rather take care of a fellow veteran and help them find their next gig.
So as you're hiring these land teams, I mean, what is the ideal profile for somebody coming into some of those roles?
We tend to look for people who already have experience doing it, but I do like to find the gems. Just somebody who can talk to anybody. That's kind of the biggest thing. And then I actually do something that I like to call shopping for employees.
Okay.
I will go to an area where I need people, and I will go to the local mall, or I'll go to a restaurant, and I look to see who's working there that really goes above and beyond. Who is providing that, not just good service, but that excellent service. And then I recruit them.
Right there on the spot.
Right there on the spot.
How's that worked out?
Very well.
Okay. Give me an example. You don't have to name names.
No. So best example, we were working on a project up in Loudoun County, Virginia, undergrounding power lines. And it would just happen to be the perfect project for this because it was something where we didn't need people that were experienced. We really just needed people who could talk, and we could train them pretty quickly for what they needed to do. So I literally grabbed another employee and we went bar hopping. Get an appetizer here, meal here, 2 or 3 different places. Ran into 2 different people that day that I thought they could do this. They could do our job and do it well. One of them stayed in the industry for 5 years with me and then decided they'd had enough. We do have some obstacles in our industry. You have to have some thick skin and be told no a lot. Or when you're not doing for solar and things like that, if you're doing it for eminent domain purposes, people can get a little upset.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I had one stick out with me for about 5 years, and the other one stuck it out for about 2 until she decided she just had to go back to running a restaurant. And she went back to running the restaurant for like a year and a half and called me back begging for her job back.
Well, you got to try some things, and the grass isn't always greener.
That's right.
Well, so what advice would you have for veterans that are looking at getting into the industry?
The biggest one is, I think whether it's for the land acquisition side or developer side or whatever, you have to at least be willing to just listen and learn. There's a lot of nuance in, our industry, and a lot of people, it's just as bad as the military about using acronyms. So be patient, go find a website that has all the acronyms listed down, until you get it all, just smile and nod your head, absorb everything you can.
Okay. And what about networking? You said you're a big believer in networking. How do people get started with their networking?
For me, it's just, I do go to a lot of the community events locally, as well as, national conferences and stuff. And you just can't be afraid. I've never met somebody before. They're just a friend that I haven't introduced myself to yet.
I love that.
That's kind of the way I look at it. Now, maybe I won't like them later or they won't like me, but that's okay. I'm at least going to try. I'm going to go up and I'm going to say hi, and I'm going to see if I can find something that we have in common.
Rick, you're a pretty easy guy to talk to.
I try to be.
So if somebody were new to Project Vanguard, how would you tell them to get the most value out of it coming into this?
Listen, but firm believer, 2 ears, 1 mouth, not a very good practitioner of it. But I do believe that, listen to what people are saying around you, engage with them the best you can, but don't be afraid. Just jump right in.
Awesome. Well, Rickey, I really appreciate making the time today, man. This has been good.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Kevin. Hopefully this goes out and we can draw in some more.
All right, Rickey. Well, thanks for making the time, man. We'll be in touch soon. Thanks for tuning into the Project Vanguard podcast. If this episode sparked something for you, share it with someone who's ready to think differently, whether it's about an all-the-above energy approach, how energy security is national security or the veteran workforce in our industry. If you believe what we're building, a quick review goes a long way. You can do that wherever you get your podcasts. Until next time, keep up the fire.